חיות, הם פה עם בהמות, כתוב.
אלוקים עשה אותם בשביל שיעשו פה
לשרת את היהודים.
Hi folks, I am the Shameless Spurg. I hope you're doing well today.
כל הגויים שאתה רואה שיש בעולם, המיליארדים האלה, הם הכל רק בשביל שהיהודים יהיה להם איזה תועלת.
So today I wanted to cover the topic of what it was that first turned me against Jews to begin with.
אז כל אחד יהיה לו
It wasn't necessarily the reasons outlined in my video on why I don't like them.
Well, I'll ask in English. Do you believe that the Gentiles, the Goyim, will one day become the slaves of the Jews?
So I believe it's part of the Torah.
There was very definitely a flashpoint that brought me to the point of flipping on them.
טוב, אני לא אותם, להביא את המספר המדויק, על כל יהודי אמור להיות 800 או יותר עבדים.
I was raised very philo-Semitic. I loved them a great deal because I was very brainwashed about them. But, you know, there came a time where I was accused of anti-Semitism one too many times for things like anti-communism that I began to wonder what the hell is going on here. And throughout the course of my research, I found a number of clips from rabbis, you know, teaching in their synagogues, in their congregations, talking about the subject of anti-Semitism, talking about the history of anti-Semitism and some of the reasons given by people for their anti-Semitism. And it was clips just like these, and digging deeper into the things they're saying and finding that they're not the only ones that think that way, that really led me to the conclusion that these people are a problem. And to me, they are. You know, thus began this journey with the Jewish question, only to, at the very end, find that it was less of a question and more of a problem, if you know what I mean. So we're going to get into some of these clips, and I'll offer a little bit of commentary in between them. Also, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got over 100,000 of you people tuning in to me, and I would just like to continue growing this channel, so please do those things. It will help me out quite a lot. Check out the shop in the description or the shop tab. I've got a bunch of shirts, including this one from the Austrian painter. For the sake of this video, I have prepared myself some notes because I had a lot of clips and it was a lot to keep up with. So I went through and I just set markers and I just wrote up a reply for each of them. So it's not as off the cuff as usual. Some of it is. So if you see my eyes wandering a bit, that's why.
God gave us the Torah. The Gentiles were jealous of us. They feel that we think we're elitist. We think we're the chosen people, which by the way we are. We do think we're elitist. We are the chosen people. They think that we think only we are the children of God, and we do think that. And we're not embarrassed to say, only the Jewish people are the children of God. The nations of the world are not the children of God. They're not God's children. They're God's creations. They're created b'tselem Elokim. They're not God's children.
Listen, Rabbi, your book tells you the Gentiles are jealous of you, but that's a fictitious history. Only Indians are jealous of you for some reason. And yeah, we know you believe you're an elite class chosen by God, and there's a lot of Christian dupes that believe it too. But for my part, I don't really care that you believe in that delusional bullshit. I'm not jealous because it's a bunch of nonsense. I care that you simultaneously reject my right to self-determination and identity, and you cry about white supremacy while holding these beliefs. And I care that you and your NGOs organize and come out against us anytime we want to try to form an exclusive community, such as the one that they're trying to form in Arkansas, Return to the Land. You know, the ADL came out and denounced it, and so did a number of Jewish groups and Jewish teachers and rabbis. You know, and you do this while you also demand our tax dollars to support your Jewish supremacy in Israel, your Jewish nationalism in Israel. You demand our tax dollars for it. Who wouldn't resent that? It's completely understandable. There's nothing mysterious going on here. Who would not resent that? And really, George Orwell himself couldn't have imagined projection, doublespeak, and hypocrisy this extreme.
And this creates a certain jealousy, and they don't like that. In other words, there's an ethnical reason. They feel that we are elitist. We think of ourselves as better than them, which we do. And therefore, they hate us.
Wouldn't that be a perfectly good reason for a host nation to hate you people? You assert your elite status while crying about me wanting to have just primacy in my own homeland. We resent you. Also, we're not jealous of you. We think you're a bunch of psychopathic and schizophrenic ethnic narcissists who excuse all of your shitty behavior and neuroses with these batshit religious claims. We resent you not for your Torah or the fact that you believe you're chosen. You're not the only people on earth that's believed they've been chosen by some deity or deities. I don't really care about that. We resent you because you're insufferable hypocrites with forked tongues. You do nothing but gaslight, lie, and project.
What can we do? God selected us, you know? Yeah, good. God selected us. So these are the two reasons for anti-Semitism. One is what Rashi says. Rashi says, Amar Rav Shimon Echai, Halacha hi v'yadua, Se'esav soinei liYaakov, that what's the reason for it? There's no reason. It's just, it is. God, the reason for anti-Semitism, according to Rashi, is that it's just a law. It's a law of nature. There's gravity, and there's, the theory of relativity, and then there's anti-Semitism. And then on the other hand, you have this Gemara in Shabbos that the Gentiles hate us for, they feel that we think of ourselves as better.
Wow. You Jews truly have no self-awareness. It's like you can't see yourself or hear yourself because your head's so far up your own ass. It's incredible. And it's amazing that after you give your reasoning or your interpretation of why it is, of why the Goyim hate you, you end on, it's just a law. They don't even know why. It's just like gravity. They just don't even know. So on the one hand, you supply your reasoning. You don't let us speak for it. Trust me, we've got things to say. So you supply your reasoning, but then you back that up with, but there's no reason really. It just happens. Like it's just happening to you for no reason at all. Just like rainfall or just a wind. No causal relationship between anything you and your people have done and the sentiment that people come to have about you. So let's be clear. We know why we don't like you. It's not because you believe these things. Go ahead. Believe these things if you want. It's because you assert these things from within your host nations. And your behavior and your corrosive effect on your host nations really reflect that belief that you hold in your supremacy and your chosenness. It's obvious because of how you treat your host nations and how you view the people that live there. We can see it in your behavior because you can't hold that belief without thinking that we are inferior and without not having respect for us. I mean, you can't really respect people that you believe you were born better than. I mean, you can't really respect a people when you believe you're chosen by God and they're not even God's children. So I guess all I have to say about that is you should just go believe that bullshit somewhere else, like, in your homeland, and you'll see how much we give a shit then. Go there and do it. Go believe that shit, back in Israel. Make aliyah. Get the fuck out of the West and see how much we care about that. We don't give a fuck. We just hate that you're here doing it. While you fight against any effort that we have towards nationalism or pride in our folk, identity, self-determination, you never support these things for us. And then you have the nerve to pretend that there's just no reason at all for people to resent you. None whatsoever. And so this clip contains the very lack of self-awareness that demonstrates why I resent you. It's not because of, Hashem gave the Torah to us and you're just jealous, Goyim. No, that's not why. Anybody, if you could just stand back and just look at this clip and just hear yourself speak, it would be really obvious. Wow, look at this guy. It's not even about the words you're saying or the substance of it. It's about the fact that you really can't see or hear yourself. Like you're contradicting yourself like crazy here. You're speaking with a forked tongue. You say all these things that, if anybody said them to you, right? Well, we're white, we're chosen, whatever. You would just fly off the handle, but the other way around, you're just like, well, it's just a law. You should just accept it. It's just normal and it's just for no reason at all. And then you have the nerve to wonder why people would resent you. But then instead of asking them, you just come up with your own bullshit reasons. It's just so exhausting dealing with you people.
In America today, we have white supremacy. In the Torah, we had Amalek.
Right. So in America, we've got a bunch of deracinated white people with the lowest in-group preference of all ethnic groups in this entire country. In our own homeland. And you mean to bitch at us about supposed white supremacy. Meanwhile, you hold a supremacist doctrine that far exceeds anything anything that even the NSDAP conceived of in their racial plan. And you're doing it here, in a nation that is hosting you and has given so much to you. You're shitty people in your true nation, Israel, where you belong.
Amalek is seen as the eternal enemy of our people, whose members found strength by making us suffer. Therefore, when the Lord your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you, and the land that the Lord your God is giving to you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget.
Go into the land you say your God is giving you then, because it is in America or in Europe, which belong to the white ethnic groups. By the way, my loyal audience, if you were not aware, modern Jews view Amalek as the white race. Collectively, Jews use something called types in their writings, where a modern leader or people become a type of a leader or people in their scriptures. To them, we're of the very same essence and lineage of Esau, Amalek, Rome, and we're slated for destruction, and they praise it, as you can see.
Our rabbinic sages parse these sentences and derive two distinct meanings. Blotting out the memory of Amalek is a military command, literally to destroy Amalek. Now facing today's Amalek, we are reminded that the Torah calls us not just to escape, but to extirpate Amalek. We are commanded to do real and literal battle against it. That means coming off the bench in the fight against white supremacy.
Did you hear that, folks? Remember, they've declared war on us first, though they will pretend otherwise. Just like how Judea declared war on Germany before Hitler ever rose to power. Some of you will have seen the headlines, the newspaper headlines from back then. There were tons of them. Judea declares war on Germany. If you haven't seen it, go look it up.
Means putting our reputations and our money, our physical bodies on the line. But also so that we are ready to answer people with radically destructive and incoherent versions of history.
Incoherent versions of history, Rabbi? You believe the Torah is the literal history of your people. Your scriptures show a theology that evolved out of a Canaanite pantheon, then into Hebrew henotheism, then into Jewish monotheism. Your feasts are obscene celebrations of violence. You practice genital mutilation on 8-day-old infant boys, sometimes using your mouths to do the job. Your entire religion is a complicated list of commands and customs devised by the religious equivalent of sleazy attorneys, always looking for a way to skirt the law with workarounds. You and your religion are a fucking joke. Your idea of chosenness and righteousness is a fucking joke. Your belief that you're moral arbiters, that the world is yours for the taking because your insane religious texts tell you so, and your belief that the destruction of my people is both necessary and inevitable. These things have made me despise you. These things have turned me from a brainwashed, good little philo-Semitic Christian goy slave to what I am today. But you will simply say, I was jealous, or some such nonsense.
So that we can counter white supremacists, so that we can counter Amalek, and blot them out by retaining on our lips and in our records their history. By being bearers of history, we can help guide the future. Blotting out Amalek need not merely be about military conquest. Equally important is ideological victory.
Now keep in mind, when he says he wants Amalek blotted out, he does also mean destroying records and edifices that show our history, and that they should be in sole possession of the narrative of our history and our time on this earth. And that's some pretty twisted and insidious stuff.
And nothing could more readily counter white supremacy than a Jewish community proudly helping our Muslim neighbors. There is nothing that undermines a white supremacist worldview more than diverse communities getting along and building together towards the future.
Look, diversity is the strength of Jews, because Jews have always been safer and more prosperous in host nations with no unified identity. They do not intend for their planned messianic kingdom over in Jerusalem to be diverse, leaving all the nations outside of the gates to the city. But for your nation, well, it's supposed to just be self-evident and unquestionable that diversity is good for us. The reality is he is admitting that diversity interferes with white unity, as it's intended to, and obviously does.
I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role.
Wow, Barbara. It's really interesting to see you talk so casually about this. When we talk about it, we get condemned as evil people who are just crazy, insane conspiracy theorists. But here you are talking about it. You're sort of congratulating yourself about it, and you're telling us that it has to happen. It's just mandatory. It's necessary. And there's just no other way around it. And it's incredible that you acknowledge Jewish involvement in this, and not only involvement, but a leading role in the whole process. And you acknowledge that those kinds of things would cause a people to resent you, obviously, because who wouldn't resent that? But I think one thing I resent most is that you will so casually say this, and you will acknowledge the reasons that we're pissed off, you'll acknowledge the reasons that we resent you, but then the rest of the time you guys pretend it's not happening. The rest of the time you pretend that we're just full of shit and we're crazy, and we're just, we're getting our information from insane, crazy conspiracy theory, white supremacist forums and all sorts of nonsense. But here you are saying it. And this, folks, this is why I don't need conspiracy theory material. This is why I don't need dubious and questionable documents. Listen to them. They will tell you exactly what they think and exactly how they feel and exactly where they believe their place is in all of this. And it's just incredible to me that she can see that and she can understand that, well, of course that's going to result in anti-Semitism.
But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
Here you are. You guys are always setting yourselves up as our saviors. Oh, what would we ever do without Jews? Oh my God. But I have to ask you, Barbara, and I ask you, my loyal audience, what the fuck does it mean for Europe to even survive? When she talks about the survival of Europe and how all this multiculturalism and multiracialism is necessary for the survival of Europe, what fucking pray tell is Europe? Europe is a collection of European peoples. Europe is a set of European ethnic groups and cultures. It's not just some economic zone. I know that's what you want it to be, Barbara Lerner-Spector, just like America has been turned into a deracinated, rootless economic zone. I know that you think the same way about Europe, and you want Europe to be the same way, but that's not what Europe is. Europe is people. Europe is the ethnic groups that make up Europe. And so if they're replaced, if they are bred out of existence, if their culture gets completely overwritten by foreigners, Europe has not survived at all. The survival of Europe can only be meaningful if the people of Europe survive and prosper into the future.
To continue over here, we're speaking about Goyim in the times of Mashiach, in the times of the future redemption. So the Rebbe asks over here a simple question. How could you say that 2/3 of the world will be erased in the time to come through Mashiach? It says that Hashem is merciful on all of His creations. So how could you say that in the Geula Hashem is going to erase a huge amount of people? How could you say in such a time God's going to delete 2/3 of the world? So the Rebbe explains and gives an answer. So the simple way we could say is that it's not that God's going to make a special action of destruction in the redemption. That God's going to erase 2/3 of the world, and so to this that Mashiach is going to, it says he's going to rule over the whole world. So a couple of the commentaries say he's going to destroy all the nations of the world. It doesn't mean that he's going to come and kill them with a rifle, with a gun, and stab him and shoot him and kill him. No, they're going to take away, Hashem's going to take away, and Mashiach's going to take away the ability of having a continuation, of having more kids. And therefore, the world is 2/3 of the world, they're going to be erased.
Oh, so by making it difficult, if not impossible, to have kids, this Hashem will basically genocide all of these nations. By the way, my opinion of this Hashem that they refer to, it's really just the Jewish folk soul, and not per se God or deity in the sense portrayed. But Rabbi, this sounds all too familiar to me, and this is beginning to sound like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So, in fact, I've seen a number of Jews supporting and promoting abortion, childlessness, non-reproductive sexual lifestyles, and mass third world migration. And to me, it really seems to parallel what you're saying here. After all, how is this Hashem fella going to do this if not completely through the agency and action of men? What, magic? Of course not. We're seeing it unfold from within our own nations, but I ask you, do you really believe this is supernatural fulfillment of prophecy and therefore inevitable, making resistance or childbearing futile, or is it starting to look more like a blueprint for the Jewish people to conquer the entire world? And this Hashem is a term for their collective folk soul. I don't buy the bullshit anymore, folks. Speaking of conspiracy theories, I find that they're not even necessary to make my case. I'm not saying things like the protocols are not instructive, but why bother when you can just deal with the Jews head on by quoting them and exposing their insanity? Between the ADL clips in my earlier video about why I don't like Jews and these rabbi clips, do you see how I don't have to revert to any questionable material? That's because they're out in the open, if you know where to look and who to pay attention to. They will confess in their synagogues those things which they call anti-Semitic tropes and canards in any other situation.
2/3 of the world are going to stop, not going to have the ability to have any more kids. And therefore the guy gets out, because God said he's going to delete 2/3 of the world.
Why would God do that?
That's what he says, he's going to punish the wicked people. No, so not everyone's wicked. So that's also the question. From the simple meaning of 2/3 of the world are going to be erased, means even the righteous ones, not even the wicked people, even the righteous God will be killed 2/3. So the question is, how could you, that's not merciful, God's merciful. So the answer over here we're saying is he's going to take away the power to have a continuation.
Oh, so you are saying your God is going to do this to us through the use of magic, and definitely not through Jews working to make it so. Through, again, abortion, childlessness, non-reproductive sexual lifestyles, and mass third world migration. I call bullshit.
Why would God do that?
And that's already not considered doing a disgusting act. You can't say, wait a second, if God's even going to take away the ability to give birth and have more people, it's also not a nice thing. It's also not being merciful. Why can't you say that? This ability to give birth that there are in creations of the world, in this is brought out the revelation of God's infinity.
While I, for one, think this is bringing about the revelation of Jewish insanity. What a bunch of schizophrenic nonsense. He will have us to believe that reproduction was magically given to us as an extra, even though innumerable species reproduce, and all evidence points to millions of years of species reproducing, and there could be no life without it, obviously. This is the bullshit you get into when you think that you are the chosen people, and your scriptures are taken completely literally, no matter how obviously absurd.
God is infinite, and so too, God gave this idea that he's infinite. The people, through this, that they can give birth and make another generation and another generation. If the ability to give birth, it could just go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, non-stop. This idea that a person can give birth, he can make more people, is something that Hashem gave a special present that he put into the creations that they should be able to make more. But a creation on its own is a limited thing, and it shouldn't be able to make more. So when you take away, when someone's missing this idea of not able to give birth, that's not that you're taking away from a person something that he has, you're just not adding and giving him something extra. Because a person on his own is not meant to make more people.
Okay, Rabbi, but in my culture, we call that being an Indian giver. Only this is the most fucked up possible example of being an Indian giver. Only a Jewish mind could wave something like this away and say, yeah, Goyim, I know you're barren, but that doesn't mean he's not a nice guy.
So it's like, it's not that you're taking away something. If someone's giving you a present, then he stops giving you a present. It doesn't mean that you're not a nice person. And then, that's how the Goyim are going to disappear in the redemption. To take away this ability to give birth is automatically going to cause that 2/3 of the world are going to get erased.
So there you have it. Their God is going to wave his magic phallus over us and take away our procreative powers.
You're going to need the iron of the sun, which represents Edom, which is the west, Europe and the Americas, to get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically Arabs and Muslims. How in the world was this ever going to happen if not for this refugee crisis?
Wait, what do you mean, how else, Rabbi? I thought your Hashem was going to do it through Jew magic by taking back reproduction. You know, the thing you say we didn't originally have somehow, but he gave it to us as a gift, and he's going to be an Indian giver about it and take it away from us. I thought that was how this was going to happen. So what do you mean, how else but this refugee crisis? I thought your Hashem didn't really need all that help. Apparently I was wrong about that.
At the end of days, you're going to have this intermixing between Esav, Edom, which is the west, and the east, which is the Muslims and the Arabs, making this through this influx into the world. And they're going to have children, I don't want to say by the dozens, but they're going to have a far larger birth rate than the indigenous people there, and they're going to sort of conquer by number.
Huh. Conquer by number, you say? Wow, that sounds like a xenophobic and Islamophobic conspiracy theory if I ever heard one. But here you make it sound like such an obvious truth that no one could be so stupid as to think the situation would do anything other than make white people disappear.
The idea of having these refugees come into Europe, it's no longer a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's just simply fulfillment of what it was meant to be all along. This is the fulfillment of the Chazal and the prophecies.
That's right, folks. It's just some magical thing that's happening, and it's definitely not the result of them working tirelessly to create the scenario by helping to coordinate these refugee crises and placing pressure on Western nations to take them in. It's just this inevitable Jew magic that cannot be stopped.
This has to happen, and this is just another sign that we are nearing the completion of this tikkun of the entire world.
Now, if you want to go on believing these Abrahamic prophecies, go right on ahead. But I'm leaving you people behind as less than useless in our struggle. Just go right out the clock and stay out of our way when we go to do what must be done to secure the existence of our people.
Le Mashiach viendra que quand Edom, l'Europe, la chrétienté sera totalement tombée. Donc je vous pose la question, c'est une bonne nouvelle que l'islam envahisse l'Europe? C'est une excellente nouvelle, ça annonce l'envie de Mashiach. Excellente nouvelle.
Wow, you called it an invasion? Wow, Rabbi, just wow. That's racist. See how Jews are perfectly aware that we are right about the situation we find ourselves in? The difference is they believe their prophecies grant them the world as their sole possession, even as they themselves are entirely responsible for enacting such supposed prophecies.
Vous allez le payer très cher, les Européens. Mais à un point, vous n'avez même pas notion de quoi on parle. Et vous n'aurez pas au fil. Parce que tout le mal que vous avez fait à Israël, vous le paierez au centuple. Quand l'Italie disparaîtra, quand Edom, c'est pour ça que le QG de la chrétienté qui vient de Esav se trouve là-bas. Quand cet endroit-là disparaîtra, et c'est ce que veut faire l'islam, il s'occupe. L'islam, c'est le balai d'Israël, sachez-le.
Here we go again with the Islamophobic conspiracy theories. Seriously, Rabbi, get it together. Oh, wait, I forgot the number one rule when discussing Jewish agendas. It isn't happening, but it's a good thing it is. That is, if you praise it, it's obviously real. Duh. Only a dumbass could think otherwise. But if you denounce it, it's not real and you're a bad person. Think that sounds like a bunch of incoherent nonsense and insanity? Well, just go to college, you uneducated bigot, until it makes sense to you. Remember, folks, this is all just magically happening with prophetic Jew magic.
And we are saying, yes, we will love our neighbor. Last week, Highest organized a letter signed by over 1,200 rabbis. Can you imagine getting 1,200 rabbis to agree on one thing?
As a matter of fact, I can imagine 1,200 rabbis agreeing with each other under one condition: if it's good for Jews and bad for white people.
But agree they did, and what they agreed was to ask our elected officials not to halt or even to limit the United States Refugee Admissions Program.
Oh, yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense that you all agreed on this one decision. It turns out this isn't really a fringe view like some of you like to pretend it is when I show you the evidence of your fuckery.
And it's not just Hayek. Jewish organizations of all kinds across the spectrum of Judaism are issuing statements in support of refugees.
Oh, not just Hayek, you say. Jewish organizations of all kinds have joined the cause? Well, Barbara Lerner Specter would be proud. But why does this cause need so much support if it's really just happening through unstoppable prophetic Jew magic? Why does it need so much support? Why does it need 1,200 rabbis? Can't your Hashem just do it all alone if it's prophetic? What, pray tell, is prophecy when a bunch of Jewish organizations come together and they use purely earthly means to accomplish their goals?
למה באמת היטלר רע נגד היהודים? מה הוא רצה? מה הפריעו לו? אבל הדברים כתובים כאן במיינקאמפ. זה הספר יצא רק לאחרונה, התירו לתרגם מיינקאמפ בעברית, זה אסור כל השנים. אבל יש לי תרגום קודם יותר שיד ושם תרגם קטעים, להם היה מותר. היטלר טוען בספר שלו שהיהודים הם קומוניסט. הם עשו את המהפכה ברוסיה. הם הרגו שם 30 מיליון רוסים, את כל האינטליגנציה, בצורה אכזרית ונוראה. ואת זה הם רוצים לעשות לכל העולם. הארץ הבאה בתור זה גרמניה. הם הקימו את המפלגה הקומוניסטית והסוציאליסטית הגרמנית, וזה נכון. אם אנחנו לא נתגבר עליהם עכשיו, הם יחסלו אותנו וישחטו גם כאן 20 מיליון איש את כל האינטליגנציה. וככה הם הלכו מארץ לארץ. כשבסופו של דבר האינטליגנטים היחידים, החכמים היחידים, יהיו רק היהודים. והוא חוזר על זה הרבה פעמים, שלא תהיה טעות. והוא צודק. את המהפכה ברוסיה עשו היהודים.
All right, so in this next clip, a rabbi explains why Hitler hated Jews. He uses a Hebrew translation of Mein Kampf to do this, which very few Jews have actually read. As mentioned before, one of the things that led me down this path was being called an anti-Semite for being anti-communist, even when I still loved Jews. Then learning of the depravity and insanity of their teachings. It calls to mind a familiar saying some of you will recognize. Gradually, I began to hate them. Again, let me remind you, I do not need conspiracy books to make my case, preferring to hear it from their mouths instead. So let's take a look.
Who knows the first 2 laws that Hitler implemented? Who knows the first 2 laws? Before the Nuremberg laws. Before that, we're talking about years before it. Hitler first comes into power. What's the first 2 laws? Okay, I'll save you the time. Rule number 1, no more pornography, no more homosexuality, none of that garbage. Not allowed. Berlin in the 30s, in the 20s, was the Sodom and Gomorrah of the day. Homosexuality, pornography, all the bestiality, all the garbage of the world, that was the capital of the world. He outlawed it. You're no longer allowed, closed all the bars, all the gay clubs, all the production, which were all run by Jewish people. Second rule, you're not allowed to charge interest. No more interest. Now you would think, why? What does he care about interest? Well, because all the people that had the money, that lent the money out, were Jews. He said no more interest. Why? Because of the high interest that the Jews charged people was so high, it ruined, it destroyed the economy in Germany. They destroyed, just like they destroyed Russia a few years before that through their communism over there. Jews destroyed Russia, not Goyim. Jews destroyed. Communism is by Jews. Well, don't let anybody confuse you. You look at history, Karl Marx, all the other Reshaim, they're all Jews. Wicked, but nonetheless Jews.
Wow, how charitable of you to call your fellow Jews who are communist wicked. But if there's any fringe view in this video, it's that Jews have done anything wrong at any place or time in history. In fact, Rabbi, it's pretty anti-Semitic of you to point out this truth.
They destroyed Russia, and he wrote in chapter 2 of Mein Kampf, they destroyed Russia, now they're destroying Germany. Go to the store to buy bread, you had to take a whole horse carriage full of money. By the time you arrive at the store, it wasn't enough. Why? Because the inflation rate was so high. The bread became so much more valuable and your money went down. And at that time, the Great Depression was happening around the entire world. Everyone was in a financial collapse. America was a financial collapse. England was a financial collapse. Germany collapsed worse than everybody else. But after he passed this law, within 6 years, Germany became the leading, wealthiest economy in the world. They called it a financial miracle. Why? They were the only ones that were bold enough to stop interest. This is one of the biggest reasons of why he hated Jews. Because they destroyed the economy, because of their greed. This is happening again.
So are you seeing now why I became a National Socialist? This rabbi couldn't have done a better job selling it to me. So you tell me, do you really think I resent them because of so-called jealousy? Do you really think that I resent them for literally no reason at all, as they would have you believe? I resent them for the same exact reasons the German people did before the rise of the NSDAP. Like this rabbi says, it's happening again. Are we going to view it all as immutable prophetic fulfillment against which resistance is obviously futile? Or will we take our fate into our own hands and throw the yoke of their tyranny off our necks, once and for all?
בעזרת השם זה יחזור. הם ירצו הגויים להיות עבדים שלנו. הכי טוב להיות עבד של יהודים. הם שמחים להיות עבדים, רוצים להיות עבדים. מסביבנו עמים כאלה, בעיות גנטיות. תשאל ערבי פשוט, איפה אתה רוצה להיות? הוא רוצה להיות תחת הכיבוש. למה? כי הם לא, יש להם בעיה גנטית, הם לא יודעים לנהל מדינה, הם לא יודעים לעשות כלום. תראה איך הם נראים.
Well, look here, Rabbi, I certainly don't want to enslave anybody like you do, but I understand what it is to live amongst people who couldn't run a country on their own and can't really do anything. I understand what it is to live amongst people who have, shall we say, genetic problems.
והנה התורה כולה, תורת הגזע.
בוודאי שיש גזענות, מה אנחנו לא יודעים שיש גזעים שונים בעולם, מה זה סוד זה, מה זה לא נכון, זה נכון, מה לעשות? כן, אנחנו גזענים, אנחנו מאמינים בגזענות. יש גזעים בעולם, ויש תכונות גנטיות של עמים.
Here you go stating it so matter-of-factly, when the rest of the time your fellow tribesmen are denying it and gaslighting us and using double standards and doublespeak. And if we point out the obvious, they call us evil.
השואה באמת זה לא שהרגו את היהודים, זאת לא השואה. כל התירוצים האלה כמו זה אידיאולוגי או זה שיטתי או כל זה לא שטויות. זה כיוון שזה נבע מתוך אידיאולוגיה במידה מסוימת זה יותר מוסרי מאשר סתם שאנשים רוצחים. הומניזם, כל התרבות החילונית זה אנחנו מאמינים באדם, זה השואה. השואה באמת זה להיות פלורליסט.
Well, that's a really peculiar and interesting thing to say, and in light of people like Barbara Lerner-Specter and Hayes that Jewess was talking about. Really interesting for you to point out that pluralism is the real Holocaust. And it really makes sense as to why your people support it for me. I totally get it. If only you guys would admit it more often.
ההיגיון של הגרמנים הוא נכון יחסית לעצמם. אומר היטלר שקבוצה מסוימת באוכלוסייה היא זרע הפורענות לכל האנושות, בגללה כל האנושות תלך לאבדון, הם מרעים לאנושות, ולכן צריך להשמיד אותה.
Look, I don't care if you're speaking in support of Hitler. The fact is, there's no documented evidence that he ever called for or planned in any sense to genocide you people.
האידיאולוגיה הזאת נשמעת לך לא הגיונית? רעה מאוד. זה לא נשמע מוסרי. משה רבינו, אכזרי רשע כמו היטלר? לא. למה לא? יש דבר אחד רע בעולם וזה להיות סוף.
Well, my loyal audience here will be aware of my hatred for hypocrisy, so I can certainly appreciate his stance here. The funny thing here, though, is that Jews are often the biggest hypocrites on planet Earth. It's truly breathtaking sometimes to see the level of, oh, what do they call it? Chutzpah that they have. The hypocrisy, the double standards, the gaslighting, the projection. It's truly unbelievable. Well, Rabbi, now that you're asking, I suppose I would prefer gas over the more crude instruments like knives or whatever, but the fact remains, I don't think it ever happened, you know? Like, I understand the point you're trying to make here, but the fact is, I don't believe it ever happened. The late Ernst Zundel famously said, in America, you will have Weimar problems, and in America, you will have Weimar solutions. Zundel believed strongly in the blood and spirit of white Americans. He believed we possessed within us a revolutionary spirit that, if and when we decide to rise up against them, would make Hitler and his movement look like child's play. He believed this. He had a lot of faith in us. I want to have that same faith in our people, but it's up to us whether we awaken that revolutionary spirit and put it to good use, or if we burn out and fade away as our nations degrade into third world hellholes. I confess that I've become increasingly doubtful in my fellow white Americans, but I do still believe in the potential in their blood, if it would just awaken and if they would listen to its instructions. Because after all, the most precious possession you have in this world is your own people. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it enlightening and instructive. This succession of clips represents pretty well the process of discovery and transformation that I went on. First as a curious Christian, sort of questioning his beliefs around politics, religion, and history, only to later on become a National Socialist. But I think the transition makes perfect sense, and I hope this video sort of demonstrated how that happened. That all being said, thank you guys for your love and support, thanks for listening in, and until next time, you take care.